Hi, and welcome to Praise Dance Today. I'm your host, Minister Gail. The topic for today is defeat or not defeat. That is the question. Talking about bare feet when you're dancing versus wearing the proper shoes. Now, I know this is a hot topic. I realize that modern dancers and hip-hop dancers or even ballet dancers nowadays with neoclassical ballet, everybody wants to dance barefoot. So I took my notes. I'm going to be looking at my notes because this is a little bit more in-depth than some of the other topics I have tackled. First I'm going to say there are reasons we wear shoes, and there are pros and cons to wearing shoes. There are pros and cons to not wearing shoes. I am on the side of wearing shoes when we minister and dance. It doesn't matter what form of dance we do. I am on the side of wearing shoes. So I'm going to go today, not necessarily to prove to you why you should wear shoes, but just to offer up something for you to think about as you are deciding whether your ministry should wear the proper dance shoes or not. So I was looking at the origins of shoes, or actually not wearing shoes. I was looking at the origin. Why aren't we wearing shoes when we dance? So when I looked back at the origin of barefoot dancing, it's first recorded with Isadora Duncan. Now, I know African dancers have been not wearing shoes for a long time. I realize that. In Africa, they don't wear shoes when they minister and dance. Or not just minister, but dance, period. When they do African dance, they don't wear shoes. I understand that. But we're talking here. We're talking the first in the formalized training when the first recording of it was Isadora Duncan. It was the earliest 20th century, and she was rebelling against the norm. She was rebelling against the prim and proper classical ballet, wearing ballet slippers and point shoes, and so enters this spirit of rebellion. She decided, I'm just going to be totally different than what they do in classical ballet. So she took her shoes off. She was wearing very thin and flimsy garments that almost you could see through. So she started the whole evolution of dancing barefoot. And then Martha Graham, who was a very prolific modern dancer, she picked up the practice. Now, mind you, she wasn't doing it at first, but she adopted the practice of dancing barefooted, and that just solidified it for the modern dance world. That, boom, Martha Graham's doing it. It must be the way to do it. We're going to dance barefoot when we dance. But remember what I said, that Isadora Duncan did it in a spirit of rebellion. So I just want to offer up, maybe it's a spirit of rebellion that still hovers over dancing barefoot. I'm just saying. So now let's look at, since I told you that, let's look at some pros and cons of wearing shoes. So pros and cons in the natural. Pros, wearing dance shoes protects your feet. It covers your feet to support you when you dance. You know, the shoes themselves support your actual foot and your arches. They're aesthetically pleasing. I don't have to see, your toes looking like this or what color you painted them. I'm not paying attention to how long they are or anything like that. So the shoes offer up protection. They offer up support. They are covering that hide your feet away from eyes. Because, honey, there's people out here right now that like your toes, and they want to look at them, and they want to do other things to your toes. I'm just saying. So in the natural, that's what the pros are. In the natural, the cons of wearing shoes are they can be uncomfortable. You got to find the right fit. Sometimes it's hard to find your right fit. I just like to be barefoot. Your shoes get old. That's another point. When they get old, that means you have to buy another pair, and they're expensive. They got to be replaced. So you got to do all of this. That's the cons. They can just be expensive. And to keep clean, you got to keep them clean. And don't get white ones, because if you get white ones, those get dirty so fast. So those are, in the natural, those are the pros and cons. In the spiritual, the pros represent the spiritual pros, excuse me. They represent your walk. Your feet represent your walk. And the shoes represent your covering. And our covering is Christ. And we want our feet to be covered. We want our bodies to be covered, because the word says that our feet are God's feet. He's using our feet to deliver his word. He's using our hands to serve. So your feet need your covering to be evident. And that's one thing that wearing shoes do. They cover your feet. And we want to be covered when we dance. We want the Holy Spirit to be guiding us and protecting us, and ushering us into his presence. Cons, opposite of what I just said, is the barefoot would represent being uncovered, naked before God and man, which means you're vulnerable, which means and not in a good way, vulnerable in an unprotected way. So that's the cons, spiritual cons of bare feet. Another natural con to bare feet is your feet get dirty. They get sweaty. They stick to the floor. Your movements can be jerky if your foot gets caught. So your movements can get jerky, especially if you're not a trained dancer. You can get floor burns, seen it a lot, has had it happen to me quite often when I was dancing modern dance, training as a modern dancer. So you can get rug burns or floor burns that don't feel good, I'm telling you right now. It's just, and it can be uncomfortable to be barefooted. You can get calluses when you're barefooted dancing, because your foot has to build up some type of protection. So, because that's how wonderful the body is. The body's like, oh, I'm unprotected, so let me help myself out. I'm going to build up some calluses. So now, not only do your feet looking like this, but you got calluses on them looking like that. I've seen some feet, believe me. So just to give you stuff to think about, we don't want to do anything that takes away from the message that's being delivered. And if one theme I can have through all of these vlogs is be careful about the message that is being delivered, and be careful about what you say in your movements, what you do, how you're dressed or undressed, how that takes away from the message that you're trying to deliver. And covered feet, uncovered feet, I mean, now I'm going to say you got to pray and ask the Lord what's for you. Don't just do something because I'm a modern dancer, or I'm a ballet dancer, or I'm an African dancer, and this is what they do in African dance. I've danced many an African dance with shoes on, many a modern dance with shoes on, covering my feet, so I will not be a distraction, or my feet will not be a distraction. So you know what your toes look like. Look down at them right now and decide whether you should cover your toes, cover your feet when you're dancing. All right, thank you so much. I know this is a long vlog today, but I wanted to really talk about that, put that out there about the feet. I know what you're thinking already, but it's all right. It's good. We need the dialogue. We need to have this conversation. So I am Minister Gail. Thank you for joining me today on Praise Dance Today. Leave your comments below. Suggestions, as I always say, leave your suggestions. Like my vlog, subscribe to my page, go to my Facebook, say hi. Visit my website, gailgloverfoss.org, gailgloverfoss.org, or email me, libin1@bellsouth.net. Thank you so much for joining me today Stay tuned. I'll see you on the next vlog.